Hello, my name is Debby Maziarz and I am a community development practitioner and facilitator. I started my creative career when I joined the circus at the age of 16. I then went on to start a circus for kids called the West Side Circus. Today in my practice, I run a mentoring and coaching and training service for artists and arts organisations. In my work, I'm really curious about the notion of leadership. What do artists need and want, and how can we, as artists and as a sector, create the right conditions for artists to not only make their work, but also thrive? I am here with Anni Hagberg, who is currently exhibiting Trace Encounters at Manningham Art Gallery. Hi, Anni.
Hi.
Could you tell us about your exhibition and your arts practice?
Yeah, I would describe my practice as a sculptural installation practice with a primary focus on ceramic materials and ceramic processes, but perhaps not a traditional ceramic practice as such. I'm really interested particularly in the firing process and how that brings forth really vibrant and dynamic interactions between different materials and in response to the environments they're in. And I think this exhibition, Trace Encounters, builds on those core notions, as well as a newer interest of mine in a practice of foraging, which is, for me, refers to a kind of agnostic sense of curiosity and opportunistic encounter with the material world around me.
Great. So I'm thinking about motivation, like what it could be the day-to-day motivation that you find, or even motivation in a piece of work. What really motivates you?
I think I'm motivated by precisely that sense of encounter. So not so much about the material itself or by my own preconceived ideas or even notions of creativity, but I think that interaction that happens between myself and the material, as well as myself and the environment, and how all of those factors kind of play and intermingle amongst each other, and that how they are encountering one another and how I can encounter almost those interactions and encounters again.
And just experiencing your work this morning, I noticed that you utilise everyday materials as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that process?
Definitely, and I think that comes back to that sense of foraging that I was talking about earlier. So I spend a lot of time picking up little bits and pieces that I find as I'm walking, as I'm at a bus stop, or even in nature. I'll find, you'd be surprised how many rusty nails there are everywhere. So I always have my pockets full of little pieces of metal or glass or stones and objects that I'm finding. And we might not think of them as everyday materials, but they really are a part of our everyday material environments. And I think those are pieces that really inform my work. And as much as they might not be immediately visible in the final outcome, they fuse in with the other materials and processes that I use and really ground my practice in the actual material world that I live in, and not just a sort of idealized version of that.
And can you describe a time, maybe recently or in the last year, when you experienced an unravelling or a grounding in your practice?
Because I work so much with ceramic mediums and processes, those are things that require quite a lot of facilities and equipment in terms of kilns. And at the beginning of the pandemic, my studio was based at a university, and I used university facilities in terms of kilns and glaze rooms and other things. And I think that loss of access really had a very unraveling effect on my practice. But at the same time, through that, I think I realized that a lot of traditionally used processes and techniques in ceramics have this goal of utility and function in the end, which isn't actually integral to my practice. So I think through that unraveling, I was able to kind of ground my practice in the things that are more important for me. So those material encounters, and that those can be explored maybe more authentically with less sort of strict and technical approaches. And by kind of losing some of those preconceived notions of how you need to do those techniques or how you can interact with ceramic mediums really opened a lot in my practice, and I think grounded it in the things that are important to me.
Yeah, it's like the silver lining. And I think being an artist, I mean, I struggle with this, you know, the balance of the professional and the creative and the personal, and how potentially your practice is embedded in everything you do. How do you practice self-care?
I think for me, an important aspect of self-care, especially within my creative practice, is making sure I leave enough time and space for really open-ended making that has no goal, no preconceived notion of what the outcome needs to be, no just anything, just leaving space to make almost mindlessly and just like without any focus on something. And I think that really looks after my own ability to be creative and fresh with the materials and things that I'm interested in, without always thinking back to deadlines and what's next on the calendar or kind of deliverables. So I think that is really important as a means of self-care for me.
Great. Well, thank you so much and good luck with your exhibition.
Thank you.